Hey there, my name is Jamie, and here is my story. Let me start by saying that my parents have never been good people. They began leaving me home alone when I was only 7. When they were home, they ignored me, but if I made a mess or bothered them, then they would scream at me. It felt like they never wanted children and that I was an unwanted accident. In school, when I would tell my friends how I was being treated, no one believed me. They all thought I was making up stories. As soon as I was old enough, I got a job and I saved every last penny. My plan was to move out when I turned 18, and in order to do that, I needed money to be able to afford to live on my own and possibly to go to school. After all, I didn't want to work at a fast food restaurant my entire life. And I needed an education if I was to make something of myself. I tried to keep how much money I had a secret from my parents, as I knew that if they knew that I had money, that they would no doubt find a way to take it, and my plans would be ruined. I lied and made it look like whatever I was earning, that I spent it on clothes or other useless stuff. When I turned 16, I had $25,000 saved up, and I knew that while I needed more, that I was doing well. Over the years, my Uncle Larry noticed how hard I was working, and more than once I confided in him about how much I was saving. I never actually told him what I planned to do with the money, but I think he had suspicions. He was always kind to me and understood how awful my parents were. Things were okay, until Uncle Larry came over crying. I had never seen him sad before, and it worried me. It turned out that he had been diagnosed with cancer, and they had only given him months to live. I couldn't believe it. I was horrified for my uncle. After that day, though, my parents began acting strangely around me. They were so kind and considerate, making me dinner rather than forcing me to fend for myself. They even began buying me things and telling me how much they loved me. At first, I was pretty skeptical as they had never done anything like this before. I thought that maybe they had seen my uncle's situation and realized that they were squandering their relationship with me. That, of course, wasn't the case, but I was pretty naive and I rather enjoyed the attention. The months went by quickly, and my uncle became sicker with each passing day until one day he passed away. I had never cried more than I did on that day. My uncle was the one person in my life that I actually loved and loved me back, and now he was gone. After the funeral, my parents were still acting the same though, and I was relieved that they had turned over a new leaf, and that maybe it had taken the tragedy of my uncle's passing to get them to finally be parents. After a few weeks, my parents told me that I needed to go and speak with a lawyer. They made up something about my uncle leaving me his car in his will. My uncle had owned a muscle car, and I wanted it more than anything. Once we got to the lawyer's office, stacks of paperwork were thrust in front of me, and I was told to sign them all. Hey, what exactly am I signing? The lawyer was about to speak when my father shushed him and then cut him off. It's just some paperwork that states that the car your uncle left you is yours, but since you aren't old enough to drive, that we will hold on to it until you are 18 and can assume ownership. What he was saying kind of made sense, and so I kept signing. Once we got home, my parents reverted to their old selves. I tried to ask them what was for dinner, and they told me that I was old enough to figure dinner out on my own. I was a little shocked, but not half as shocked as the next day when my father came home in a fancy new sports car. My mom was in the passenger seat and was wearing expensive jewelry. Guys, where did you get the money for all that stuff?
From you? My God, you are such an idiot. Your uncle left you $100,000 and you signed it over to us along with your bank account. Although we were surprised to find out how much you had in it. We expected there to be a few $100s, but $25,000? Thanks for the money, son.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and so I ran inside and jumped on my computer to check my account balance. It was zero. They had completely drained it. I stormed downstairs to confront them. How could you do that to me? I worked hard for that money. That money wasn't yours to keep anyways. After all, we put a roof over your head and kept you fed. You owed that money to us, and if you don't like it, then you can get out. Angrily, I grabbed my backpack and filled it with overnight stuff, and headed over to my friend's house. When I got there, though, the lights were all off, and it appeared that no one was home, and so I headed back home only to find that all of the doors were locked. I knocked and yelled, but my parents never opened the door. That night, I slept outside and then returned in the morning when I was told by my parents to leave and never come back. They were throwing me out. I didn't know what to do. I had left my cell phone in my room when I left and had no way of getting a hold of anyone. I tried to go to my friends for help, but my parents had called their parents and told them that they had to kick me out because I was dealing drugs. I couldn't believe that my friends' parents believed their lies, but they did, and so I was turned away from every house I went to. Desperate, I began to beg on the street, and people felt sorry for me and gave me what they could. It was never much, but I survived. Weeks passed, and then months, until one day I was begging on a street corner when a man that I recognized walked by. It was my grandfather, and I ran up to him to beg him to help me. He was surprised to see me, and he was about to walk away. Apparently, my parents had told the same lies about me to the whole family as well. But after a few minutes, I was able to convince him that it was a lie, and then I told him what really happened. The look of surprise on his face was almost painful. Instantly, he took me by the arm and dragged me home where he fed me and demanded that I take a hot shower. Later, he sat me down and told me that he was sorry that he had believed the lies about me and that if I wanted to, that I was welcome to live with him. I accepted immediately and promised him that I would get a job and that I would help with the bills. He laughed and told me that it wouldn't be necessary as he was quite rich. The only thing that I had to do was go to school and study hard. I couldn't believe it. Not only did I have a roof over my head, but my grandfather was willing to pay for me to go to school. I felt so blessed. The years passed, and I graduated from school and became a doctor. Not long after that, my grandfather passed away, and since we had formed such a strong bond, he left his house to me and his will, along with hundreds of thousands of dollars. I was saddened at his passing and vowed to make the best of the gift that he had left me. No sooner had my grandfather been laid to rest than my parents showed up at my house and demanded that I give them money. It turned out that they burned through my uncle's inheritance in months, but had kept spending money and had so much debt that they had lost their house and were living out of a motel. Their clothes looked like rags, and both of them smelled like they hadn't showered in days. I looked at them disappointingly and then slammed the door in their faces. There was no way I could forgive them for how they raised me, and then had stolen everything from me. For all they knew, I could have died living on the streets, and now they had the gall to demand money from me after everything they had done? Fat chance of that happening. Please like the video for the algorithm.